This presentation will discuss some of the key concepts relating to the advertising unit for Component 1, Section A of your exam. Here are, of course, the quality street advert from the 1950s and the sweating like a pig, feeling like a fox, this girl can sport England advert from the 2000s. Some social and historical context for Quality Street. The advert, the product itself made by Macintosh, originally created in 1936. It's important to remember that chocolate was a luxury product in the 1930s, but by the 1950s, the time of this advert, Macintosh aimed to make chocolates more accessible to the masses. This was after post-war rationing, when luxuries were becoming more accessible and British society was becoming more consumerist again. The two figures in the painting are from the Regency era, and the reason this has been chosen is because of the similarities that the parallels they're trying to create between the Regency and the 1950s. The Regency was a period of social and technological advances as well as a population boom. The 1950s saw high culture, theatre, the arts and decadence become more accessible to the working classes, not just for the upper classes. So this is a period of aspiration to something more high class, and the advert very much reflects that sense of aspiration. We're going to look at some of the codes and conventions and how they are used to create meaning in both of the adverts. In terms of layout and design, as always, the rule of thirds is important. The man is centrally placed here to signify his importance, while the two women are positioned on either side of him, seemingly seeking his approval. It is quite a text-heavy advert, but that is very typical of adverts of the 1950s, and Quality Street are still establishing their brand here in the wake of World War II. The heavy use of purple is part of Quality Street's attempt to establish its brand. The purple, of course, carrying connotations of royalty, elegance and luxury, which very much links to the image that Quality Street are trying to create for themselves. The use of primary colours, the reds and blues for example, links very much to the consumerism of 1950s society. And you might want to consider the sexual connotations of the positioning of the sweet tin there, a way of exerting masculine and sexual dominance in this advert. In terms of images, we'll consider the mise-en-scène. First of all, the man in the suit, very much a symbol of power and wealth in this patriarchal society. The Regency figures in the picture, as has already been said, link to a period of luxury, elegance and decadence. It's interesting that those figures are looking down on the man and the two women, almost in envy of them, really elevating the status of the product. The skin tones of the men and women are interesting, a much darker skin tone for the man, hinting at his ruggedness, whereas the white, bright skin tone of the women very much links to the delicate purity of them, reinforcing expectations of femininity in the 1950s. The women are wearing the colours of the sweets themselves, perhaps linking to the idea that the women, like the sweets, are commodities, something to be owned by the man. In terms of language, looking at the two captions is important. What a delicious dilemma. This is an interesting one because we have to ask ourselves, is that statement referring to the man and the women or the sweets themselves? Not only does he have a choice of which sweet he wants, but also, seemingly, he has a choice of which woman he wants too. Delightfully different uses a playful, alliteration, causing a light-hearted, almost flirtatious tone, which very much anchors the main image. In terms of representation, in masculinity, we have the man in the suit, as has already been said, a symbol of power and prosperity in this male-dominated society. His dark skin tone suggests a man who is rugged, strong, and wealthy. He is centrally positioned, asserting his dominance. He seemingly has the choice of the two women. Interestingly, that is presented in a positive light. This idea of infidelity, perhaps, almost is acceptable for the man. The position of the sweet tin here is a suggestion that he is in some way exerting his sexual dominance. In terms of femininity, we have the women, the colour of the sweets, females as commodities, something to be owned, but also to be desired. Their pale skin and red lips is very much the aspirational stereotype of the 1950s housewife. This is appealing to an audience which aspires to be like this. They are either side of the man, competing for him, seemingly dependent on him for his approval. But another way of reading this is perhaps that they are using their sexuality as a strength. They are kissing him as if to distract him so that they can get to the sweets themselves. That is a much, much more progressive and feminist reading of what is otherwise a subservient image of the woman. Moving on to the This Girl Can campaign. This was a national campaign developed and funded initially by Sport England, designed to break down the barriers to women participating in sport. A survey revealed that one of the biggest barriers to women participating in sport was the worry about image. It was funded by the National Lottery and backed by a government body, and there was no financial incentive to this advert. The incentive was purely about social improvement. Some background and context. It was revealed that 2 million fewer 14 to 40-year-old women participate in regular sport than men of the same age. That is the motivation for this advertising campaign. 13 million women said they would like to participate in more sport and physical activity. Of these, 6 million did not participate in any at all. The major reason for non-participation was a fear of being judged. And since the campaign, 1.3 million women have started exercising, and the rate of increase is faster than for men, which helps to highlight the success of the campaign. Again, we'll explore some of the codes and conventions and how they are used to create meaning here. The rule of thirds, well, in this case, the woman is not entirely central. That is breaking convention. And breaking conventions is very much part of the message of this advertising campaign. The shallow depth of field places the woman in focus on her own. She is given prominence, an identity, an importance, and that very much links to the progressive feminist message of the advert. The sans serif font is mature and serious, just like the message. This is a message to be taken seriously. A modern convention of an advert is the use of logos. The National Lottery and Sport England are partners of this campaign. They fund it. But not only does it signify their funding, it also gives the advertising campaign credibility. It is something to be believed in. And the This Girl Can is placed on the woman herself. It very much relates to her as an individual. And this is aimed at an audience of women who should be able to respond to this as individuals and recognise their significance and their importance. In terms of images, again, breaking with convention, we have a lack of direct gaze from the main person in the advert. This is a woman who does not feel the need to face up to public scrutiny. Don't forget, this is an advert which is about removing judgment, rejecting the expectations of society. This is a woman who is very much focused on herself and what she is doing. She is not seeking the approval of anyone else. It is a very, very real image. We're so used to seeing photoshopped images of perfect skin, complexions and beauty. Here we have a woman sweating, dishevelled hair. Her clothes are flowing freely. This is a woman accepting who she is and what she looks like in exercise and finding a beauty in that. There is no need to paint over it. Normally in adverts, the exposed skin of the female sexualizes her for the male gaze, which is what Laura Mulvey would argue. Here we have exposed skin, but that is completely rejecting the overly sexualized expectation of women. And there are no men at all in the shot. This is an advertising campaign targeted solely at female viewers. In terms of the language used, sweating like a pig here again is rejecting expectations of image and perfection. Feeling like a fox, the fricative alliteration, gives it a sensual feel, an almost sexual feel, promoting femininity and sexuality. Fox is both predatory in terms of the animal, but also sexual in its connotations. Here is a woman who can be sexy despite exercising. That is the message that is being promoted here. And "This girl can" is the tagline of the advertising campaign. This is a progressive message of certainty, positivity, individuality and confidence. In terms of the representation of gender, well, we only have a representation of femininity here. This is an advert which is all about rejecting expectations of perfection, promoting self-image, a real self-image rather than a photoshopped one. And a focus on the individual certainly, but also a collective message. This is about creating a community of women to get behind this campaign and start uniting together in exercise and physical activity, but also uniting together in accepting who they are in all their forms.